starting with the Ascii points. So I'm going to choose what to export as far as Ascii points go. This is a really small survey. It's not very many traverses, not very many points. So I'm going to go up to File, Export. I'm going to tell it I want to export Ascii, and I'm going to choose the entire survey. But I want to just camp here a minute and show you that I get to choose what part of the survey I send out every time I export. So I can export just a particular drawing and the points that are in that. I can select points, traverses, all that sort of stuff from the survey and then export just that. This is small enough, like I said, so I'm just going to export the entire survey. Now, right next to the Ascii type, so I select that from the type list, is this gear button. And this is going to allow me to go in and change the settings. So let's click that. And here are my Ascii export options. So I can come in here and tell it exactly how I want to send this information out to the Ascii file. And I generally send out comma delimited point, comma, northing, comma, easting, like that. And pretty easy for folks to figure out what that is. And of course, they can open it up in Notepad or whatever they happen to have on their computer. So it's real easy for them. I'm going to tell it that I want to include the point descriptions here. And then the options I normally use, I just pretty much leave everything blank. I'm going to write it as an Ascii file. That looks good. I'm going to browse to the location. Remember I said I wanted to put this in this deliverables folder. And I'm going to call this points. This is the file that the architect is going to look at, so he'll know that these are the points in there. We're going to write those points. Let's preview that real quick. And it looks just like what we saw before. So here's all the points in the project now in that deliverable folder. So it takes just seconds to do that. Let's walk back now though and take a look at a couple of options here that may be important to you. When I write an Ascii file, it doesn't have to be coordinates. I can just as easily come in and tell it I either want to create a new format, save a new format, or I've kept a couple of them around here. One of them is the Trimble Business Center Geodetics, and that writes comma delimited also, but point, comma, latitude, comma, longitude, and then the height, and then the description. Okay, so I can write geodetic positions as well. Now, this was just a site survey of a lot that's already been monumented, so I just used 5,000 for it. I didn't have to worry about state plane. I was out with the total station, so I didn't even interface it with geodetics at all. So I've just got a local grid, and I'm not going to have latitude and longitude available here. So I'm going to go back and choose a coordinate method, something that makes sense. And here's my XYZ. Now, I want to talk to you about two things here that people do ask about fairly often. One is attributes. Depending on what kind of data collection you use, you may store all the monument descriptions or the site descriptions in the point description, or you might split some of those into the attributes. A lot of times I'll put things like PP for power pole in the description, and then the attributes I'll put maybe the ID number for the pole or how many anchors it has, that sort of thing. So I can just as easily come in and include a space and then A for attributes, or a comma for attributes, and I can pretty much create whatever format I want for whatever I'm sending it out to. So this architect doesn't care about that. I'd probably just do D space A, so now I get the description and the attributes. A data collector may want you to separate those out with a comma. So it's kind of up to you how you match that. Then I want to talk to you real quickly about this convert coordinates. We get a lot of questions about grid to ground, ground to grid, that sort of thing. Now I'm working in a local grid here, and that's the grid that I use to write the DWG file and the coordinates. So I'm not going to change that up here. But what if I'm working in a state plane grid and the project is using ground distances, ground coordinates? How do I make that jump? And I just want to show that to you here real quick. In the survey information, I have a tab called Project Factors. And I just want to look at this for a minute with you. Grid to ground is determined by the combined factor, which is the grid factor based on the projection, and the elevation factor based on the elevation, and some kind of a location, usually a point, that I'm factoring about. So I'm either expanding away from that point or contracting back toward that point. And Traverse BC makes it real easy for me on this project to pick that point, and if I want, click this button that says compute this combined factor from the location. So I can pick a point or enter coordinates. I can enter a geodetic position. I can also compute an average, and we added this within the last year, I think it was. So I can have Traverse BC compute an average position for the project, including an elevation, and I can then use that for my combined factor and have it compute the factor at that position on the grid and at that position elevation-wise. So I can have all of this available for me in the survey, and watch what happens now when I come in and choose these settings. I say I want to convert coordinates, and then I use that gear again to say, how do I want to convert? Well, here's the base point I want to factor about. Here's that combined factor, and I can simply check this to say use project location. So Traverse BC will go into that project location and pull all that in for me. So here's my location point, here's my factor, it'll just be done. I can also do that manually. I can say pick some point or enter some coordinate, or if I'm in a geodetic survey, enter some Latin long. And then I don't want to change the units, but I want to apply this factor to it. And that's what Traverse BC is going to do if I say convert coordinates and then export. Traverse BC is going to say, okay, the coordinates are on state plane, but the coordinates I'm going to export out are going to be ground coordinates. So now when I measure a distance between two of those points, it's a ground distance, not a grid distance. And I'm just going to hit the OK button and write this, because I want you to see what happens when I do that. I'm going to make sure that I've got everything turned on that I want. Let's go ahead and export that. I think I've got the same file selected. Yep, so we'll overwrite it. And this is what I wanted you to see. I wanted you to see that Traverse BC gives me a record of what it did in the message view. So here's today's date. I know I'm doing a coordinate conversion, and it tells me what the coordinates are in the survey and what they get converted to for the export. So it's this second line that's actually going to show up in the file. So really simple way for me to say, okay, in this project that I'm working on, I'm on a projection on a state plane or UTM, whatever my projection is, but the project needs coordinates at ground, and that's how I do it. Real simple. Without that ability to do that in the export here, I'd have to go in and use the tools in Traverse BC to actually convert from grid to ground. And then do I save that survey, not save that survey? Do I undo that? It's more steps to walk through, and I think this one's just a lot easier to establish that. And then take a little time and look around here. There's lots of options as far as descriptions, point labels, modifying labels, creating whatever extension I want for the file. So real easy for me to get a nice set of points out really quick. And I do that on every job.